Hello, everyone. Welcome to the press conference for the film Mud, which is shown in competition and will premiering here in Cannes. And with us today, next to me, one of the producers, Ms. Sarah Green. And at the other end of the table, two other producers, Ms. Lisa Maria Falcone and Mr. Aaron Ryder. In the title role, Mud, Monsieur Matthew McConaughey. As Juniper, the woman he loves beyond reason, but we can understand that, Miss Reese Witherspoon. Now the two kids, if I may use the term loosely, because they're very mature. He was here last year on screen as in The Tree of Life, Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. He was a luminous kid who grows up into Sean Penn, Mr. Ty Sheridan. Making his film debut as Neckbone, Jacob Loveland. In 2007, his first film was shown at the Berlin Festival. In 2011, his second film, Take Shelter, was shown in Cannes, at Sundance, in Deauville. It was in the Critics' Week here. In 2012, he's in competition, not too shabby young man, director, screenwriter, Jeff Nichols. And I'll throw the first question at you, Mr. Nichols. We still haven't sorted out and sifted through what we saw this morning. We have stories of one adult loving another adult, story of love between kids, a whole story of mentoring from Sam Shepard to Mud, from Mud to Ellis. You wrote the script. How did you sort of weave all those strands together? Because we never miss a step.
Thank you. Well, the one thematic tie or thread is obviously romantic love. And I think there's something, if you want to define it even further, to say it's unrequited love. And I think the best tool I had in terms of having it all hold together and resonate with a singular purpose was in the character of Ellis. When thinking about making a film about love or writing a story about love, which every story is about love, arguably, I thought it would be interesting to put it all through the eyes of this one young boy. And he's everywhere, and he's observant, and he is in desperate need of understanding of this feeling. And I think by anchoring all of the characters through his eyes, I was able to, for my own sanity, keep my head wrapped around it. But for me, it was really about this boy desperately searching for a version of love that works. And the adults around him, in some particular instances, are just really bad examples. And but that doesn't faze him, and if there's anything that I want people to take away from all this is, in love you get banged up and bruised up, and for some reason though we always put ourselves back together, and we go after it again, and that felt like something worth talking about in a movie.
Before we take questions from the audience, a recommendation to you all, particularly you guys: don't be such good boys. If you want to jump in and contradict the director, don't hesitate.
Sure.
Okay? Anytime. Question over there. Le monsieur en bleu. Yes.
Hi, Thomas Adamson, Associated Press. It's a question for the two kind of main actors in the film, Matthew McConaughey and Ty Sheridan. Basically, he's talked about getting banged up and bruised up for love. It was obviously a very physical film, from getting shot at to falling in snake pits. Imagine being covered in snakes in the shooting. So my first question is, how did you prepare for it physically? What did you do? And my second question is, sacrifice, friendship. Emotionally, it was obviously quite an ambitious film. And how did you prepare emotionally for the role? So, Matthew McConaughey.
The physical part, I don't do. Got the right pair of jeans and the one lucky yellow shirt and got muddy. Ty and I are both from the South, and I think very comfortable in those rural areas along the creeks and the rivers, and that felt very much like going back to my childhood. So it was a great natural set to be on daily, and one that I was very comfortable in. What was the second question? Second part? Emotionally. I had a wonderful time just getting back in the clouds of that sort of going back to the first time that Jeff has talked about it, the first time you're in love, whether it's called puppy love or whatever it is. It's ruthless. There's nothing grounding about it, as you said, beyond reason. There's nothing reasonable about it, thank God. And my character's he's a dreamer. He lives in those clouds. He does fate, and if he ever got pragmatic or reasonable, he would come back down to earth, and he would then die of a heartache. He's a real existence of an example of unconditional love that he has for this woman, and has had it for 35 years and will have it in his mind probably as many lifetimes after this that he lives. It's boundless, it's endless. And so to go back and spend time and not be reasonable and pragmatic as we learn to get with age is where this character Mud lived. And I serve as a conduit somewhat for this man in the summer of love that he's going through. And he's got many examples that he's seeing. As Jeff said, he's seeing love really not work in his real life. But he's met an odd adult in this character of Mud on this island that is saying, no, it is still true. You don't have to succumb to reason or pragmatism, or it doesn't have to make sense. And yes, it will hurt, but that doesn't mean you have to love any less.
Is the word reason going to haunt me until the end of the
I like that word reason. I'm glad you started off with that one.
He looks at you every time.
Yes.
Okay. Question over there, and then here and here.
Hang on, Ty's got it.
I'm sorry.
Second half of that.
Sorry.
About the physical part, physically I prepare myself, like Matthew said, just by, I've been intact with nature and the outdoors through all my life, and I'm just blessed to be able to do that, and I thank my father for that. And it reminded me a lot of back home, and that part didn't really bother me.
It was remarkable finding these boys that could ride dirt bikes, run boats, hunt, fish, whatever I needed them to do. Hey, jump down in that hole and I'm going to throw snakes on you. All right, I'll do that. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing to find. I don't know, maybe all boys are like that, but I don't think so. It's not like we imported some kids from LA and we're like, okay, you're going to have your boat lessons today. Jacob just hopped on the motor and just started driving, and the same with Ty. I mean, that dirt bike, I couldn't steer that dirt bike, and they just, we'll get on. We're not going to give you helmets. I don't know if that's legal, but that's fine, So.
Let's hear your side of the story of Jacob.
How did you prepare, Jacob?
Not very hard, really. Wasn't a whole lot to prepare for. Me and my character are like the same person, so it wasn't really that big of a preparation for the set and movie.
I'll say this. I'll give you a compliment. So
Okay.
here it comes. It's one thing to find a boy like Jacob who is Neckbone. He is. And I knew that from meeting him and talking to him. But it's a very different thing to play Neckbone. You know, these lines weren't improvised. This was scripted. And he was able, along with Ty, to ingest these lines. And so you're gonna hear from them both that, oh, we just showed up, you know, we are these guys. But there's something else going on. And I just want you guys to know that. It wasn't, they weren't just freewheeling. You know, there's some real talent there.
Question over there.
Rodrigo González from La Tercera newspaper in Chile. Two questions from Mr. Jeff Nichols. I understand that you like most the movies by Terrence Malick. I'd like to ask you about if there's any particular influence or relationship with movies from the 70s, like Badlands or Days of Heaven. And another question is, why did you choose Sam Shepard for that character? What is the importance of that election?
Right. I actually wrote that part for Sam, and you know, one of the best days of my life was when Sarah called me and said, "We've got a reaction from Sam through his agent," and his agent says he wouldn't change a word of the script, and I was beaming. I would find people on the street and be like, "A Pulitzer Prize winner just said he wouldn't change a word in my script." It was like one of the best days of my life. And you know, so that was Sam. You know, I mean, that's a dream come true, working with him in that specific role. For me, you know, Badlands, I have 5 films that are like my top 5 favorite films. The majority of them have Paul Newman in them, but Badlands is always number 1. I have a different relationship with Malick's other films, but Badlands to me is as near to perfect as you can get. And I don't know if I would place it in terms of the 70s or the 80s. I also like At Close Range a lot. I think that was in the 80s. I just kind of pick and choose films. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of film, but there are a select group of films that I like very, very much that I continually go to. Again, the majority of them have Paul Newman in them. If you look at HUD, The Hustler, Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, you know, you could pretty much turn those on the television any day of the week, and I'll sit and watch them all, and they're beautifully done. You know, I think film is cyclical in terms of the industry, and there are periods of time when filmmakers are, for whatever weird reason, allowed to make their own movies and given good resources and amazing actors to work with. And I'm very fortunate to, I think, be in one of those periods, you know. And I think that's why people point to that period in the 70s. For some reason, somebody opened the door and let those people make films, you know. I'm fortunate to be kind of in one of those cycles.
The lady over here, then the
Hello,
gentleman
Helen
behind.
Barlow from Australia. I have 2 questions for Reese. You're the second Southern blonde bombshell at the festival after Nicole Kidman. However, you are the real McCoy. And I was just wondering what it was like for you to make that film in the South. Have you ever been in those kind of environments? And why would a movie star of your calibre take a small role like this? We're used to seeing you as the star.
Well, like the boys were saying, I grew up with my brother in a creek on a dirt bike, riding around, doing motocross, and you know, down in the dirt fishing and everything like that in Tennessee. So when I read Jeff's script, it just felt like home. And I never get to see home on the big movie screen. And Jeff brought such a authentic, beautiful story to the place that I'm from. And it was just very appealing for me. There's very few movies about the American South that are accurate, and I feel like this is one of them. And particularly these 2 boys. You know, when I read the script, I thought, oh, well, these boys have really got to be great, you know. And when Jeff told me he wasn't going to cast any LA kids, you know, he was going to find some real Southern kids, I was so relieved and excited because, yeah, the things you see them doing in the movie are really how we all grew up. So I was thrilled to just be a part of it. You know, I had a conversation with Jeff, too. I don't normally take this size part, and I kept going back to the script and reading it and going, okay, I don't know if I could do this. It's not that I don't like the supporting parts. It's just sometimes I've done those parts and it distracts from the story. Sometimes I feel like it pulls focus in a certain way. And I had Jeff's assurance that it was a true ensemble, which, you know, when I actually saw the film, it really is. You know, there's beautiful performances that really come forward, but I felt like I'm so honored to be part of this wonderful ensemble of amazing actors. And Jeff wrote a script that I feel like you care so deeply about every single character, and each story seamlessly weaves into the main narrative about the discovery of love. And that's why I just thought it was amazing. So I was happy to be part of it.
Have all the actors here seen the film already? All of you? Okay. Sorry, Jeff. You were...
Oh, no, I'd like to say two things about Reese. One, I think she does an amazing job of fitting into the world in this particular film. I was very pleased with the way she blended in with the scenery, you know. But that being said, and this was kind of the conversation I had with her early on, and the reason why I felt like I needed Reese Witherspoon. I mean, Reese Witherspoon. And was because even though her character's screen time is somewhat limited, and bless her heart, I just trapped her in a motel room the whole time, she still managed to look good. And you have this man over here talking about her through the whole film. You know, I needed someone, when she shows up, you have to say, there she is. You know, it had to be someone that could be believable in the role, but could stand out all at the same time. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And she does it really well, in my opinion. So,
Question over there.
It's a question for Mr. Nichols, Ben Hoyle from The Times. Miss Witherspoon was just talking about the accuracy with which this film portrays the South, but it also has a big kind of epic, kind of mythic sweep to it.
thank you.
I wonder if you could just talk about the balance between realism and myth with this film, and particularly with regard to the ending, whether you were always going to go for the sort of happy ending at the end, or whether you considered a bleaker one.
Oh, I never considered a bleak ending for this movie. I'd had enough of those. I don't consider my other two films hopeless by any means, but they're a different kind of film. And no, it would have felt wrong, in my opinion, to end this film on a down note, because that's not what the cycle of love is, you know. I hope maybe it is for some people. I hope that's not the case. I'm happily married. I love my wife, and I didn't really want to put a death nail in the idea of love, which meant keeping Mud alive, you know. Ah, damn it, I just ruined the end of the movie.
That's a twisted piece of reasoning.
In terms of the myth and everything else, I've got two things going for me. One, I had Mud, and Mud was a great depository for superstition. I found this old book at like a used bookstore called like A Brief American Dictionary of Superstition, I think was the name. And it was in alphabetical order. You would just find, you know, owls. And it would tell you why owls were the different types of superstition. Also, Borges wrote a book called, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on it, Imaginary Beings, I think. And it talked about all these different kinds of creatures and things, one of which was directly affected his character. So, you know, I had a great character to be able to you know, pour all of these superstitions into. But then when you set it against the backdrop of the Mississippi River, I mean, there's no greater river in the world. And in terms of the stories that have been birthed from it, in my opinion. And I think that helps, you know, to choose that as a backdrop. It's almost like the boys saying they showed up and we're just the characters. We just went to the Mississippi River and we found an island, and you just start letting Adam Stone shoot the camera in it. It's beautiful, you know. Also, I mean, to be a little technical, I really like shooting anamorphic, you know, in the scope aspect ratio. A film I didn't mention earlier, but, you know, Lawrence of Arabia. I like big, sweeping movies, and I like applying that idea to these places that I come from, which people, I guess, sometimes think are small, and because a small town isn't small, a small town is epic and sweeping. At least that's the way I see it. So.
Was Take Shelter an anamorphic?
We didn't shoot it in anamorphic, it was Super 35. So it was still in scope, it was 235, but it was a different process.
Thank you. Question all the way there, and then the lady here.
Yes, hello, this is Yanis from Greece. First of all, I'd like to compliment Mr. McConaughey for his performance. He seems to be one of the festival's revelations. My question, though, is to Mr. Nichols. I would like from you to elaborate a little bit on your general relationship with nature, because as I saw it, the true spirit in mud is mud itself, the real mud, and the sand, the trees, the weeds. Given that your previous film is again inside the nature, I would like you to elaborate a little bit on your personal feelings.
Trying to decide whether to give you a practical answer or a smart-sounding answer. Because the practical answer is these places exist and they're beautiful. And I've never shot a film digitally. I don't know how it works. It doesn't mean one day I won't have to figure it out. But 35 millimeter film is a beautiful medium. And with enough sunlight, if you take a camera out and shoot nature, it's gonna look beautiful. And you know, I'm very fortunate to have a relationship with Adam Stone, my cinematographer, and a confidence in him to be able to go to these places and know that they're being captured. Now, that's the practical answer. The other answer is, for this story specifically, I mean, love's part of nature, you know, and I think it's hard to separate those two, but I wouldn't say that's why I tried to capture a lot of nature in this film. You see spiders and bugs and flies and lots of things. It's even in the sound design, we just want it to be buzzing. But that's because it's about life. It's why it doesn't die, and it's, you know, for me, it's about these kids going out and exploring, and that just seemed like a fascinating place to be when you're 14 years old, or if you're 40 years old. And so I needed the visual look of the film to support this kind of sweeping emotion coming out of his character. It's really hard for me to talk about thematic strains in all of my films because I try very hard to approach each film singularly. I think each story deserves its own telling. That being said, I'm young, and I'm still figuring out my own personal aesthetic and style. And it's very obvious that I like lingering on nature. It just feels honest to me. And there are a lot of films that the pace of the films, they never allow you to, over the course of the film, while you're watching it, allow it to kind of settle into your mind and give you time to think about things. And that's what I use some of these moments for. It's almost like, okay, take a second, let it sink in, and now we're going to go ahead and move forward. And maybe that's a fault in some people's eyes, but it's a style that I'm finding myself liking. So I hope that answers your question.
Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Chaz Ebert from...
Hey, Chaz.
Hi, Jeff. From RogerEbert.com and Ebert Presents at the Movies. I have a question. Your talent was apparent right from Shotgun Stories. My question goes back to, I want you to talk a little bit about the community of filmmakers from your film school days and be with you and David Gordon Green and some others, because there's a certain mood and feeling and authenticity that you have inside, but also I think that was fostered in that filmmaking community, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Wow, they'll be happy you asked that question. I graduated from North Carolina School of the Arts, which was a small public film school in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it was very new when I went there. I think they'd only graduated one class, so maybe that means I went in the 5th year that it existed. Fact check me on that, I'm not sure if it's true. And they didn't quite have the program figured out, and I mean that in the best way. They gave us cameras and they let us make movies. And I was there, I was 2 years younger than David Gordon Green. Another great filmmaker named Craig Zobel was there. Danny McBride, Jody Hill. And those are just the ones that have, that have their names on stuff. I met Adam Stone there, my cinematographer. You can ask Sarah. I populated the crew list with friends from college. And I'll talk about that in a second, but what the school allowed us, one, it was in the South. A lot of us had come from the South. We either couldn't afford or couldn't get in to NYU or USC. And I think that was probably the best thing that could ever happen to us, because we found ourselves in the South learning film with each other, as opposed to being in New York trying to figure out, where do I find a cotton field to photograph. And so, that school, just by default almost, and not to take anything away from the school, but it was the perfect kind of breeding ground for young kids, and no one was around to tell us that we weren't doing it correctly. And that was a really valuable thing with hindsight. And that being said, there were a couple of professors there. One in particular, Gary Hawkins, had a tremendous influence on a lot of us. He was the first person to give me a book by Larry Brown and Harry Crews, and it opened my mind, and it opened a window in my mind to contemporary Southern fiction, and I steeped myself in it. But then as far as the group of people that I worked with, I mean, there's nothing better than working with friends, and I'm now very lucky to consider these people on stage with me friends. But I don't know, there's a comfort level that happens on set, and the way you make a movie defines the kind of movie you make, and it's just nice to look over and see my buddies, and I think that somehow imprints itself on the film.
So far, the 3 producers have remained remarkably silent. Is that the idea you have of what your job is? Be there if needed, and once the crew and the cast are put together, just stay out of the way?
I think that producing can be fluid, and it's different from each film. And with the 3 of us, we each have our roles in this film. And Sarah and Jeff live in the same city together and have a very close shorthand. Lisa and I have our own shorthand with Jeff. But it's different for each movie that you take on, and I think that's why people are so confused about what producers do. And what I'm very proud about, though, is that we've all entered this film trying to go after the same end game and create this remarkable piece and support Jeff.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the singular vision on a movie set. It takes a whole lot of people to make a movie, and it's one of the fun parts of it. It takes many people. But when too many people are trying to take the lead, it's mush. And I try only to work with people who have one singular strong vision that we can all get behind. So it's true, actually. If I'm not needed, I'm silent.
I wasn't contradicting you.
I know, but you said it well, quite honestly. My feeling is, if it's working, stay out of the way. If things are going in a way that one doesn't expect, it's to quietly point it out, and then, let the director make the decision.
Sarah has a beautiful way about her, and about getting her opinion included. It's effortless. I've never been on a project before with Shotgun Stories. I produced Shotgun Stories, and I was the only guy around. And with Take Shelter, I had 2 good producers there, but it was very much we were all doing the heavy lifting. On this, things just happen. Things just happen, and Sarah, Aaron as well. They're great at creating space. It's where I know there were things going on. This was a complex shoot, and I got to hang out and have fun with these actors, and they were great at creating an environment for me to just play. It's really the first time in my very short career that I didn't have to worry about like who was getting picked up from the airport. I mean, I know that sounds so silly, but I had to drive Mike Shannon to the airport on Shotgun Stories, and it's just so valuable. I can't express it enough. And what Sarah is able to do, and Aaron as well, and Lisa, they never said you should do this. You're going to do this. They just they give what it feels like. They give me a lot of power and flexibility. But what that does is when they make a note, you want to honor it and you want to listen to it, and whether you do it or not, you want to address it. And it's very sly. It's a very smart way to produce.
Well, let me add this too. Okay, let me add this as well. Jeff, as you can tell, for those of you who are just first meeting him, obviously a very respectful guy who has a lot of self-respect, but also really respects everyone else's job and position. So as much as he's got a singular vision, which he does, which is, I suppose, part of the assuredness of going in to go work with him because he wrote the words and he's at the helm, he's also very respectful and pragmatic of everyone else's job, a budget, time, things like that. And so using the right and left side of his brain while he's really spending time in the right side as the director, he's very pragmatic as well and respectful of everyone's responsibilities. That's a real talent for someone, especially that's, I don't know, how old are you?
33.
33, yeah. A lot of young men or women at 33, don't really consider that other side, the other things that help us make movies like this. They maybe don't consider it as much as he does, and effortlessly. And it's not something that ever gets in the way of his vision, but he's very respectful that way.
Thank you, Matthew.
That's true.
I'd like to add one thing, if I may, which is that we were superbly lucky to have Lisa Falcone on the team, who is a very, very active and creative producer, but also our financer, and that's a rare combination when it's someone that you also respect their opinion and know that when there's an issue or trouble, the answer is always what's best for the movie. And that gave us all incredible confidence to do our work.
Ms. Falcone, any comment on that?
I have to say that I am so involved in the film from beginning. When I read the script with Jeff and I saw Take Shelter, I said I have to do a film with this guy. And when he brought the script, it just was a no-brainer. I mean, I love his style. I think he has his complete different style. I did show it to a friend of mine, Scorsese, and he said, this guy has his own individual style, and he's an amazing director. Coming from an amazing director, I think that is huge. And I shared with him because we're neighbors. It's not anything that I'm like sharing the movie with everyone, but that speaks for itself loudly if you want to know about a big name. As far as I'm concerned, when I say I'm going to be involved in a movie, I get so enmeshed with the vision of the director, and I see the actors working so hard, and the crew, and Sarah, and Aaron, and it became such a tight team that anything they needed, it was going to be yes. I'm not a money-driven person, so the first thing I want to do is, if it's going to make the film, what's the best thing for the film? Yes, that's what I'm going to do. It's not what's best for anybody else, but what to protect that vision. And I'm so proud of the outcome of this film. I can't tell you how proud I am when I see it and I view it, and I could see it 20 years from now really resonating, and it'll be a classic. In my heart, that's what I feel. And I hope to work with all of these friends now again. It was an incredible opportunity for me, and I'm happy to be up here with them.
Question over there, then the gentleman, then the gentleman.
Hi, I'm Elaine from Hong Kong Cable TV. My question is to Matthew and Ty. Your character, Mud and Alice, has built such a strong bonding since the beginning of the movie. So could you guys share a little bit more about the bonding at the set between you two, and how was the collaboration? And for Ty, did Matthew help you in any way throughout the process? Did he share his experience with you? Thank you.
You can learn a lot of tips from veteran actors. And I learned a lot of things from Matthew. And, I think it's just cool to be able to see that experience and be able to learn from these great actors. Me and Matthew are from the same part of Texas, and we talked about that a lot. And I think that just because of that, it was an immediate bond. And he's a great friend of mine, and I'm glad to meet him, and I'm blessed.
For me as well. Yeah, Ty and I had an inside scoop, being from the same part of Texas. There's a little link and say a few things behind everyone else's back sometimes. No, but my character, as I said, I think is a conduit for his character's sort of journey through love in a summer. How long? What's the story take place over? How long?
A few weeks.
A few weeks. But this young man in the film, I mean, he becomes my friend, and I mean, and there's I just got a little chills talking about it because it reminded me of a certain scene towards the end that I'm not going to talk about. But he becomes my buddy, and so our relationship sort of just began to sort of mirror that. I mean, there were times where I was the mentor, and there were times where I was the brunt of the joke, and he busted me, and it was always so in a friendship, I don't know, even though there's a large age difference, that's kind of how it happened on the set. So we had some camp outs, we did some fishing.
I want to add just one thing, which I forgot and I shouldn't have. I have to really thank Tom Heller and Gareth Smith, which is part of Everest, because we call ourselves Everest Team. And I want to make sure that I don't forget to say that, because I really mean it.
Thank you. Question over here, then over here.
From Rodrigo from O Globo in Brazil. Question to Nichols. It's impossible to watch this magical film you brought here without thinking about Huckleberry Finn. I would like you to tell us a few words if Mark Twain was an influence, and if you could tell something about your partnership with Michael Shannon that's in the film, was in Take Shelter, is back here.
Thank you. If you're going to steal stuff from somebody, you should steal stuff from somebody really intelligent. And I stole things from Mark Twain. The best example is the boot print with the cross in the heel. That's how Tom and Huck would recognize Huck's father, who's a drunk. And they would see his boot prints and know that he was around. And I just thought that was awesome. So that's stolen. The thing, though, that really, I don't know. Mark Twain's one of my favorite authors. And there's a scene in Tom Sawyer where Tom swims out into the middle of the Mississippi River and takes a nap on a sandbar. And I think I read that in 8th grade in English class. And I just could never get it out of my head. And I hope I'm not reverse engineering some cool anecdote here. I really think it's stuff like that that it imprints on your mind, and you just kind of, it finds its way into what you do. To be a little bit more analytical, what I think Twain did more with Tom Sawyer than even Huck Finn is he really was able to encapsulate what it was like to be a child growing up on the Mississippi River and the adventure and the spirit of that. And I've read a little bit about, in his own words, about what he was trying to do, and it's very similar here. I picked a boy that was a little bit older and dealing with a little, some more mature feelings possibly, but there's a magic to that age that has nothing to do even with the setting. The setting just kind of drives it home, but yes, he was more than a direct influence on me.
Sir?
Jacob, you read Huck Finn during the show. What do you think about that?
Yeah, me and Ty got to read Huck Finn through the set and through our classes. And we found a lot of stuff that happened to wander onto the script. That we were.
Say it.
Yeah, we did question Jeff on that one.
Sir?
I Bruce Kirkland from the Toronto Sun Media in Canada. And this sort of leads out of what has been talked about throughout the press conference. And in fact, I even feel it when Jacob was just talking. There's a kind of directness of language and presentation that also comes through Ty's performance. But I wanted to talk about an ideal that's enveloped in those kind of little singular moments, and that's the idea of the South. Because I personally have gone hiking and bird watching in every southern state, funnily enough, except Arkansas.
There you go. That's what you're missing.
So, but I understand the geography. I don't necessarily, as a Canadian, understand the idea, even if you've read, Fitzgerald and Tennessee Williams, et cetera. What is the idea of the South, especially now in filmmaking for 2012, that you're trying to capture? Is there a way to describe what the South means to you? Because it seems to be so important, as it is to Reese, as it is to Matthew.
This idea took quite a back seat because I had a lot of other things going on in the script. But it was there, and it's represented in the character of the father, which is this notion that in the contemporary South, it's a dying way of life. It's a dying accent. There's a great book called All Over But the Shoutin' by Rick Bragg. He's a journalist out of Florida, I believe. He was raised in Alabama. And he talks about his daughter going to a high school in Atlanta and getting made fun of for a Southern accent. And it's interesting to me that these places and these people have such a particular accent and such a particular culture and a life that is born out of the place that they're from. And it's kind of getting quickly homogenized in the United States. We build things very quickly and we tear them down very quickly, and then we build new things. And I kind of wanted to capture a snapshot of a place that probably won't be there. I mean, the houseboats, the legalities behind the subplot of the houseboats maybe are a little fictionalized, but people do want the houseboats off the river, and they just won't be there forever, And I think it's a bigger comment on the South. And again, you shouldn't get too lost in this, but it's such a specific question. I have a specific answer, and I want to answer it. But the South is a precious place, and it's easy to get for it to get lost. And if I was trying to say anything, it was that the South is fleeting, But even saying that, it always seems to you always seem to find it again. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how it reemerges. But every time I go down these back roads and find these people in these places, like there's always a story, and it's hilarious, or it's heartbreaking. And I don't know. I just felt like it was important to go capture something that might be dying. That was sad. It's not that sad.
It's funny you say it might be dying, but it's kind of remarkable if you think about the other films that are here at the festival and how many of them are actually set in the South. You have Lawless, and I think there's always going to be a fascination with it, especially in movies.
Well, Southerners we're good storytellers, And, it's like, I don't know. I won't go down that road. It has a very specific culture, and it has a specific voice, and I don't know. It's interesting, I think. I think people find it interesting. It's hard for me to talk about it because I'm from there, so I was just stepping out my back door to express it, but it's cool.
I'm afraid our time is up. Thank you very much for being here, and congratulations for a great job, all of you guys.